Hello and welcome to my fountain pen review. Fountain pen review. We have a couple fountain pens for you today. We have two different colors of the Pilot Petite ones. We have it in green and black. We have the Uli fountain pen in blue. I do not remember the brand of this. I know it is, or I believe it is German. It looks like this. Hopefully someone will know the brand of this beautiful little pen. And our final pen is the Platinum Preppy fountain pen in black. Actually we have one more. We have a collegiate fountain pen joining us today. This is a brand unknown Reed College pen. So let's kind of look at our collection once again. I do own some pretty low quality fountain pens where you dip it in the inkwell, but those are in a different location that I cannot easily access for this video. So I thought for any other fountain pen enthusiasts, we could look at some fountain pens and kind of try to suss out which is the better one out of the ones that I already have. So let's start out with I'm going in order of the way that they're laid out for me. Let's start with the Uli Blue. It has this little rubber grip, which I find quite comfortable. It came with 3 blue ink cartridges. It's a very dark blue. The pen looks almost teal, like a teal blue on my end, but when it is actually written with the ink is a very dark blue. This was a cheap pen. I got it at a bookstore for probably about $6. Let me write a little sentence, and also in the rest of the paper you'll see some of my Russian homework, so please excuse that. Let's write, I didn't really think through a thing to write. We'll write Pabst Blue Ribbon. And please excuse my, not perfect handwriting. First thoughts on this pen. This is obviously not my first time using it, but it does not write very smoothly. I feel like I really have to apply some pressure to kind of get that ink a-flowing. You can really hear this pen when I write. Another thing I just remembered that I feel like I should show you guys, I don't know if my laptop camera, oh, it does capture it. This is the design on the nib. It's a clean nib, which is nice because I have used this many times before. And here's what we got to. See, when we start out with the P, you can tell that's when I decided I needed to adjust pressure that I put on the pen to kind of get a solid result. This is definitely not my greatest work in terms of handwriting. And I will blame some of that on the pen. Let me write it in a script or just classic handwriting and not in a script. It was not a smooth write. I really felt like this was somewhat of a challenge for me to write this. Like, it obviously wasn't challenging, but it wasn't ideal for a pen. So I don't think I would recommend purchasing this pen again. Not my favorite. Now let's move into the pilots. I do like the size of the Pilot Petite a lot. I think that it's very endearing how tiny they are, and they do just very easily fit in your pocket. It came with one ink cartridge. The nib does, or the cap does fit quite nicely on the pen. Simplicity. There is no design on the nib. It's a little unfortunate, but it's okay. There is no grip. Something I do not necessarily like about the pen is, since there is this abrupt change from this part to this part, I do feel like I constantly grab the little change bit, and that's not the most comfortable, but that is okay. So let's get to writing. All right. Oops, I messed up. Oof. Yeah, try again. Sorry there, pals. As previously mentioned, I do take Russian, and I do have to write in cursive, so sometimes switching back over to English is a little complicated. So you can see my mistake and the display cursive. It's a pretty consistent thickness all the way throughout. You know, you don't really have like in the blue where it's kind of thin and then it gets a lot thicker. You kind of are fine with just like a standard pressure throughout the usage of this pen. It was a very smooth write. It was very loud, like the blue Uli pen, but it was just a lot smoother. And so now let me write in just my regular handwriting. Very loud. You do have to apply a bit of pressure to use the pen and kind of get that ink flowing, but the results are pretty good. Something I didn't actually look at until now is the bleed. There we go. There is quite a bit of bleed on the blue Uli pen, which is, I would say, never ideal, and there is a fair amount, but a manageable amount of bleed on the black Pilot pen. So let's try the green. I'm confident we will get similar results. Here's a nice look at the pen. I just think it's a beautiful green color. I'm also just going to write my handwriting version now. Okay. I would say that that one was not as loud writing out, which is pretty good. Here's what we're looking at here. I think that it's a nice colorful green, almost reminiscent of like a glitter gel pen shade. I fret my roommate might be coming back soon, but that'll be okay. I think that it's a nice consistency of like ink release throughout the writing, so that's pretty positive. Let's take a look at the bleed. Very little bleed. Very, very positive. Obviously, it is a much lighter color than black, but we are still observing a very light bleed, which is positive. Okay, next pen. Let's move on to, For My Very Eyes is a brand, Lammy. I didn't exactly realize that. Oh, goodness, okay. Yes, this is my, whatever. So this one came with quite the variety of ink cartridges. Here are all of them. I currently have the green cartridge in. And I think the red cartridge is empty and unusable. And I should throw it away. That's okay. So let's unravel this bad boy. An unfortunate thing that I do not like about this pen is the fact that you cannot put the cap on the pen. You're going to have to put the cap off to the side because of this little unnecessary ball at the end. Something I do quite like about this pen is the grip. I'll try to show this as best as I possibly can, but it has some little divots in the grip for where your finger should go. And I like that because you're supposed to write with fountain pens in a specific way, you know, or if you write from it upside down like this, you're not going to get any ink. If you write from it from the side, you're not going to get any ink. It needs to be kind of like that's how you get your ink out. Another thing I do not like is that the tip of the pen always gets very covered in ink. As you can see here, it just is quite messy and unattractive. The ink will often get on my fingers and get on the nib. Thankfully, it's easy just to rub it off. I do fret getting it on this wood because this is a nice little wooden, good lord, this is a nice little wooden base. So let me write out my thing. Alright, let's take a look here. I would say, goodness. Well, that has a very rough smudge. I do recall this pen, I was using it yesterday, does have quite a long dry time, which is very unfortunate. You can see very light amount of ink release over here at the beginning, and then more ink release as it goes on, which is unpleasant. Inconsistencies in the writing, not super attractive. It's harder in my experience to write in cursive than it is in just a typical handwritten font. I don't know why, but the cursive, the ink just never wants to come out, and I do not really like that. Let's take a look at the bleed. Despite all the smudge, there is not a lot of bleed. You can see it very easily on my end, or on your end, but on my end, you kind of have to almost squint to really see it, but it does have some bleed. And this paper, for your reference, is it's a Muji notebook. Alright, let's move on to, I want to save my own personal best for last, okay? So now we're going to go into this Reed College unbranded pen. It's very luxurious feeling. very easily plop the cap on the end of the pen. See, it's a very, ooh, that's ugly. All those little dust marks are getting on the pen and kind of taking away from its real beauty. It's a nice maroon color, and I am quite in love with the nib of the pen. Let's see. Very low quality. Sorry, this is a laptop camera, but I do really love the nib. All right. I haven't really used this one before, so we'll give this is kind of the first impression. Well, no ink coming out thus far. I'm just gonna write. Okay. Very quiet write. I do appreciate that. Not a lot of ink release, unfortunately. I was starting to cover up the P for when it didn't kind of have any release, but then I decided to let it be because this is a review. So, I do really like this pen. I think that it's an attractive pen, it's a very luxurious pen, but tragically, there's just not a lot of ink release right now. As I'm writing, I'm getting some ink release, and it's becoming easier as I use the pen. I just like a pen that's kind of easy from the get-go, you know? Did we already take a look at the bleed? I don't believe so. Let's take a look at the bleed. Let me just investigate something here. Yep, that is it. I am surprised with the amount of bleed that we're getting with the small amount of ink that we were really getting on the paper. So I guess when you get the ink, it really seeps. Alright, now let's move on to the Platinum Preppy. I have been using this one every day for class. I really like it. Cap fits onto the pen very nicely. Let's take a look at the nib. Not really much of a design, a little bit of ink mess, but that is okay. It is very uncomfortable to hold for long periods of time. I wouldn't necessarily say like very uncomfortable, but definitely not the most. So let me write. So let me adjust my notebook. Okay. Let's take a look at what we got going on here. Hopefully you all can see why I love this pen so much. We did not have any sort of parts where the ink wouldn't really leave the pen. It's a consistent release of ink all throughout. No smudge. I think it just looks beautiful. I like the thickness of it. I think it's very cute. I think that there is some benefit to this very fine tip that you find in pretty much every other pen in this list. I think that there's something really cutesy about the thicker point. And let's take a look at the bleed. I would say that that is the least amount of bleed we've experienced thus far. It's right here. And so, in all honesty, I gotta just admit, I am super biased towards the Platinum Preppy pen. I think that it is a wonderful pen. It was only about, I believe, $2, so it is a very good investment. I've been using it a lot. You can tell that there's not a ton of ink left in the cartridge. And so, these are all my pens. Even if I do have a negative review for some, I still love them nonetheless. They're very good pens. This one's very heavy. I didn't realize that. All of them, I'm sure, will provide a great deal of joy for you if you buy these and write with them in class. There were points when, oddly enough, they were the only when each of these pens was the only, except for this one, was the only fountain pen that I had, and so they provided me with a lot of joy. They have all treated me very well. Obviously, some pens are more high quality than others, but I still think that they're a solid purchase nonetheless. So, hopefully, this review was beneficial to you in some way. Hopefully you now know what fountain pen to buy in a college bookstore, since that's where I purchase most of these. So, alright, see you later.